Hello, my name is Evgeny, I'm an English language teacher, and in this video I'm going to share with you some basic information about the Russian education system. My presentation is arranged along the following lines. First, I begin with a little bit of history and show you the way the Russian education system developed throughout the centuries. Then I divert my attention to its present state and dwell upon its structure and the current tendencies. And finally, I speak about the way our system migrates to a modernized degree structure in line with the Bologna process model. So, let's start. Speaking about the history of education in Russia, it's impossible not to speak about two very important figures who carried the title Teachers of the Slavs. I mean our dear saints, Cyril and Methodius, two brothers from Thessalonica. Saint Cyril was a God-given polyglot. He knew at least 6 languages and was one of the most educated men of the time. His brother Methodius was a great administrator, and together they managed to create the Slavonic alphabet and literary language. They also translated Holy Scripture into Slavonic and laid the basis for both Slavonic divine services and literature. They also managed to leave an entire generation of disciples behind them. And it's precisely this fact that made it possible for their mission to be so successful, so that it rendered a solid basis to Russian culture as a whole. In 988, partly Christianized Slavs were officially baptized by Knyaz Vladimir. From that on, they started to build schools affiliated to churches and monasteries. During the reign of Yaroslav the Wise, Yaroslav Mudry, there already was a wide network of such religious schools, and they became very important centers of ancient Russian culture. Unfortunately, this blessed time didn't last long. It was interrupted by the Mongol invasion, during which numerous lands and cities were ravaged, and many schools ceased to exist. Here we could speak at length about the following Muscovy period, about Ivan the Terrible, and all the developments of the Russian education system that took place. But to make a long story short, let's draw attention to a more recent period, to the period in which the origins of secular, European-like Russian education were laid. The most important figure in this context is undoubtedly Peter the Great. He was the first Tsar to mark the beginning of his reign by departing Russia in order to study in Germany and Holland. When he returned, he placed great emphasis in establishing modern education systems in Russia, because he was deeply and positively impressed by things he had seen in the countries he visited. It is in this period that Slavic Greek Latin Academy and Petersburg Academy of Sciences were founded. The former was the first university in Russia, and the latter is the forerunner of the current Russian Academy of Sciences. The most outstanding figure in the Russian education of the 18th century was Mikhail Lomonosov. It's on his initiative that 1755 Moscow State University was founded. Till the present day, it's considered to be the best one in Russia, and it's ranked with top universities worldwide. The Soviet period opens another very important page in the history of secular education in Russia. In 1918, Russia became the first country in the world that made its higher education free. It guaranteed not only total access to higher education for all citizens, but also post-education employment for all graduates, the so-called распределение. In spite of all the positive sides of education in the Soviet Union, it must be mentioned that the whole system was permeated with ideology. And this ideology was totally intolerant of any religious views, for instance. So any theological education was utterly suppressed. Vast Christian heritage was subject to ridicule and misrepresentation or to oblivion. Speaking about the way the Soviet school system was organized, we come very close to its present state. It's because most characteristic features remain the same till today. The Soviet school system was organized into 3 levels. The first one, elementary schools. They were called the beginning level, начальное образование in Russian. It consisted of 3 or 4 classes. Secondary schools consist of additional 5 classes and are called incomplete secondary education, неполное среднее образование in Russian. Another 2 classes of an ordinary school are called complete secondary education, полное среднее образование in Russian. Now it's time to sketch the present state of the Russian education system. If we are going to schematize the whole system, it's going to look something like this. As you see, education in Russia is divided into 4 levels of education. The first level begins with preschool education before the age of 6. It isn't compulsory, but usually parents let their children attend kindergartens or preschools in order to help them integrate into society. The next step is 11 classes at school, after which children have to make their first conscious life-changing decision. They should choose between technical schools, technikum, colleges, college, or universities, университет или институт. And universities are the third step of education. As you see, the scheme here is somewhat confused. It's related to the Bologna process. This topic is yet to come. Successfully graduating from a university gives young people the opportunity to pursue the next and final available step of education. Postgraduate studies are divided into 2 levels. First, young people become candidates of science, кандидат наук. It takes them at least 3 years, but usually a little bit more, and it's equivalent to PhD qualification. And then young scientists can pursue the second postgraduate degree, Doctors of Science, доктор наук. This degree has no equivalent in the Western education system. Unlike the United States or Bologna process model, Russian higher education was traditionally not divided into undergraduate, bachelor's, and graduate, master's levels. Instead, higher education was undertaken in a single stage, typically 5 or 6 years in duration, which resulted in a specialist diploma. Specialist diplomas were perceived equal to Western master's qualification. A specialist graduate needed no further academic qualification to pursue a real-world career, with the exception of some branches of medical professions. Nowadays, Russia is still in the process of migrating from its traditional model to a modernized international one. In October 2007, Russia enacted a law that replaces the traditional 5-year model of education with a 2-tiered approach. A 4-year bachelor's, Russian bakalavr degree, followed by a 2-year master's degree, Russian magister. The move has been vastly criticized, especially by those involved in the teaching process. The matter is that reshaping the whole curriculum appeared to be a very painful and tremendously difficult step to take. There were numerous debates about whether we should do it or not. Defenders of the Bologna process argued that the last years of the specialist program were formal and useless. Academic schedules were relaxed and undemanding, and that's why students had a lot of opportunities to work elsewhere and do a lot of other things. But critics argued that the only reason why the specialist program may seem undemanding was due to the fact that students had to devote their whole time, or most of their time, to finishing their diploma papers. The matter is that the specialist paper had to be done at a pretty high level, equal to that of a master's one, if to compare with the Bologna system. So they argue that that was the reason the schedules were relaxed. Now I'd like to share a little bit of my personal experience, because the department I teach at, Theology Department, Faculty for the German Language, Moscow State Linguistic University, our department resolved the problem in the following way. The standard 5-year theology curriculum was almost without any reduction reshaped into the 4-year bachelor's period, so that current bachelors have to cover the same amount of knowledge specialists used to cover, but in an abridged amount of time. It resulted in an increasingly challenging load. Students have to study 6 days a week, and it's very often that they have something like 10 academic hours a day. They have practical classes, lectures, seminars, and a lot of homework. So, you see, the bachelor's program became very, very challenging. Concerning the master's program, it was started from scratch. A number of renowned university professors developed an entirely new education program, so that some graduates with a specialist diploma who formerly didn't need a master's degree decided to apply for this program. I was among those students, and in the end I was very glad about the decision I had made. But speaking about the job market, there is a problem that is related to the Bologna process. The matter is that employers are generally unaware of the change. That's why standalone bachelor's diplomas may fail to be recognized as real university degree, and it may render the degree unnecessary and undesirable without further specialization. As a consequence, an absolute majority of the students I know complete all 6 years of education, including master's curriculum. The very positive side of the Bologna process is that it enhanced the mobility among universities. For example, some bachelors who studied theology at Moscow State Linguistic University decided then to continue their studies at St. Tikhon University and vice versa. The 5-year specialist training was free for all students, but by introducing 2 education stages, this tradition wasn't broken, as some may think. The master stage is usually also free for students who get high scores at the entrance exam. This is the end of the video. I hope you liked it. Thank you very much for your attention and goodbye. Спасибо всем за внимание. На всем я прощаюсь. До свидания.